everyone.
Hello, hello. Here we are on our second episode of I Take Thee. Today's topic is going to be about an action that a lot of us do not like to take, and that topic is forgiveness. So here we go. We want to make sure that we have a candid conversation, I'm Joel, and this is my wife.
Carla. How are you guys?
Carla with a K, though. Don't forget that. So, I want to start with the question, how many times have we found ourselves having a hard time forgiving our spouse, forgiving others? And so, when I ask that question, I also say, when you don't forgive, where has that taken you? You know what I mean? At the end of the day, not forgiving is just not helpful for anybody. And so here we are talking about forgiveness. We're not talking about it again as experts. We're talking about it from our own perspective, our own experiences, and what does that mean? And we want to touch a couple of topics on that. Remember that we're on from 6 to 6:15. So the first one I want to talk about is, when we find ourselves that we've been hurt, the very first thing we want to do is we want to pay back. Mm-hmm. We feel that the person needs to feel what we felt when they hurt us. And so we either look for words that are going to hurt them more, or we look for things that we can do that will make them feel less than. Yeah. And we justify it with saying, well, you know what? They hurt me, and now it's my turn to get them back. And so, I wanna challenge you towards that, because in payback, what you're really doing is you're creating a crazy cycle. Mm-hmm. If I do something towards my wife, and then she wants to pay me back for it, then I too have the opportunity to then pay her back, and then she pays me back, and then I pay her back, and that never ends well. Mm-hmm. That never ends in a place where we can feel confident, or even in a place that's healthy. So we got to really think about when we say we want to pay back, and is that really what God wants in our lives? Mm-hmm. I mean, think about it. The many times that we've hurt God, and imagine if He paid us back. That's not a pretty sight. So we just have to be careful when we make a decision to pay back for what they've done to us and for the hurt. Again, that doesn't justify what they've done to you. It's really about taking control of your own life. Mm-hmm. Like if I hurt my wife, she would take control of her life and not use that as an opportunity to pay me back. And vice versa. I would have to do the same. Like I have to be a better husband, and a more loving husband, and a more caring husband. Because remember, this is for better or for worse. And that could potentially be the moment of the worst. And paying back, all it does is just creates chaos.
Absolutely. And I think one of the other areas that we often don't look into is forgiveness can transform your marriage in many ways. Practicing forgiveness is it's a step into building a strong marriage. Not to say that forgiveness is it comes easy. Mm-hmm. I just want you to understand that forgiveness is not. It's a choice. Mm. It's not a feeling. And what I want to say with that is that simple. The fact that we may not always feel like forgiving, right? Because when we've been hurt and we're going through that pain and that struggle, we don't feel all the time that we want to forget that person that caused us that pain. But forgiveness is a choice. You have the choice to build a strong marriage by allowing forgiveness to just be a constant practice in your marriage. It starts with the little things. When you start practicing forgiveness as a choice in your marriage for the simplest things that happen in our marriage, in our daily lives, when it gets to the point of the bigger things that really hurt you, they cause you pain, that's when forgiveness if it become a practice already in your marriage, that you already made that as a choice and not a feeling, when the hurt is painful and sometimes unforgettable, you know, that because you made that practice in your marriage of being a choice, it's simple. It's simple, and it's no longer a feeling, because you know that by in order for your marriage to continue to grow, that needs to take place. And also when a spouse or your husband or your apologizes to you and asks for forgiveness, you have to allow time for a conversation to take place. And by that is when we hurt each other and we allow forgiveness, if it coming from me or from Joel, it allow us to have a concrete conversation of how he made me feel, and vice versa, right? So when that conversation begins to happen, believe it or not, you begin to see the areas that you failed on, right? And the areas and the boundaries that you need to create, because you don't want that hurt to happen again. See, we don't want that to be something that, oh, whoops, I did it again. No, because when you fail, when you hurt your spouse, that one time, by the time you ask for forgiveness, that shouldn't be a practice that's going to happen again. Oh, I failed you again on this. I'm sorry again. No, that's just not acceptable, because that conversation would allow both of you to come into an agreement, right? And set those boundaries, like, you hurt my feelings. Even they said, well, I didn't think I hurt your feelings, but you did. And having that conversation respectfully, right? Having that conversation, telling your spouse, you know, you hurt me. This is how I felt. This is how it made me feel. It allows my husband to understand me a little bit more. So if that happens again, he knows how to react towards that situation, so that he doesn't end up hurting me.
Like one of the things that you know, I like how my wife shares that is a choice, and the reason I like that is because it truly is a choice. It's free will, really. And you have the power within yourself. Like, I have the power to you know, take action the appropriate way or take action the inappropriate way when it comes to forgiveness. And one of the things that Carla and I practice is that, you know, we don't, like, I don't just say to her, I'm sorry. You know, I've learned that when I say I'm sorry, I'm really taking control of saying, well, you know what, I'm sorry, and we got to move on. But what I like to say, and this is not, I don't practice this all the time because I'm not perfect, but when I do get an opportunity to really think about what I'm saying and what I'm trying to do, I would rather use the phrase, would you forgive me? Because by doing that, what I'm doing is I'm allowing her to make a choice if she wants to forgive me. When I say I'm sorry, I'm just saying it. I'm not giving her an opportunity to respond back to what I'm sharing with her. So I love the phrase when I say, would you forgive me, rather than saying I'm sorry. And the other part is, you know, when we think about forgiveness, just remember that it's okay if at the moment it happens you want to forgive or you want to ask for forgiveness, but you're not there yet. That's okay. You know, we have our moments where Carla will say to me, like, honey, not right now. Or I will say to her, like, this is not, just give me a moment to kind of, because when we're in anger, we're just not in the best place to have a good conversation, or at least a healthy conversation. So just, you know those boundaries, know when to and when not to. You know, just don't go into it. You know, sometimes, man, but let's talk about it right now. And it's like, just relax. Take a chill pill. Relax. As long as you do talk about it, don't use that as an excuse to never talk about it. But just, take time. You have nothing but time, right? Until death do us apart. So just take time to really have a true conversation about what's happening.
And it must happen, right? And you can't prolong it, because you want a healthy marriage. We all want a healthy marriage, right? We don't want the long faces in our marriage. And that's why I think it's so vital and so important that couples practice forgiveness, but they don't want to address the conversation that needs to take place after that forgiveness, because both sides need to be heard respectfully. I need to know how he reacted, because how I hurt his feeling, I may not know how he felt, right? So that conversation needs to take place. And like Joel mentioned, maybe I'm not at that precise moment, right? But you need to allow that conversation between both of you to break those barriers, right? Absolutely. Because after our forgiveness, I just don't want to be upset at my husband. Mm-hmm. I want to be able to move on
and to heal
from that.
Those conversations are so important. I mean, conversations, and when you have these conversations, don't say, try to avoid the like pointing the finger, even if your spouse is the one who made a mistake or hurt you. Share it from your perspective. Mm-hmm. So for example, if my wife did something that I'm upset about, what I should do, I shouldn't talk to her in a way where you did this and you did that. I should take it more from the perspective of like, this is how I felt.
Yes.
Because now I'm sharing from my perspective. Because sometimes, a lot of times, what we do is we feel disrespected, and it was all based on misunderstandings. Either I said something and Carla took it a certain way, and I'm like, whoa, no, that's not what I meant. And the other way, and that could be flipped. Like, she could have said something, and I'm like, what? And I'm upset, and now I'm expecting forgiveness from, for her to ask for forgiveness, but it was really just a misunderstanding. So when you're having these conversations, if you're the one that's feeling hurt, really say it from the point of view of like you. This is how I felt. Mm-hmm. And then if you're the one hearing that, don't validate validate what they're saying. Don't just be like, well, that's not what just hear them out, because they're just trying to share with you how they felt.
Yes, and you need to allow that your significant other, your spouse, to freely express themselves, and you're just there to listen. If you're the one that caused the hurt, right, you need to listen. Right? And vice versa. If I'm the one that caused the hurt, I need to listen. And another thing so important that we wanted to touch as well, Joel, and you may want to talk a little bit about that. If we don't have those conversations, one thing will happen in the relationship of the person that was hurt. The scenario that caused the hurt, how you hurt her or him, will replay over and over and over again, and it won't stop. It will be like a non-ending cycle in your marriage.
Yeah, it's to me, I look at it from the perspective not having a conversation. Having a conversation is extremely important in the beginning of forgiveness, because I see it. Conversation is like the antibiotic ointment you place on an open wound. Without that conversation, you're not placing that protection that's going to help that open wound healed. Now know this, that when we're hurt, let's say I get a cut, even when I put an ointment and I put a Band-Aid on it and a couple days pass by and my skin kind of closes and it heals, know that there's still scars.
Yes.
So we just have to keep that in mind, that, when we should think about it twice before we do something that is going to be hurting our significant others. Because, yes, God restores. God puts things back together. I believe it. Mm-hmm. There's power in His name. There is restoration in His name. But at the end of the day, there's also scars.
Yes.
And so those scars, I don't share that for the one that's been hurt to be like, you see, that was you. Do you see that scar? That was you. No, I just share that from the perspective of recognizing that there are scars, but it's through conversations that you put a ointment on your wounds.
Yeah. And to close it up, because we always promise 15 minutes, right? And the time is fast approaching. After this conversation happens, and many couples fail to do this, right? Is that don't bring it back. What stays in the past is in the past. When you accept Christ as your Lord and your Savior, He doesn't constantly remind you of your past. Oh, you remember when you failed? Remember when you did this? That's the devil. The enemy does that. So you don't want to be that in a relationship. If you have that conversation and you have to allow the process to heal to take place, you don't bring that up just when you ran into another argument or another interference. You don't bring that back. You let it go where it is. You squash it, right? In that precise moment of that conversation, you don't bring it back into your relationship.
So we have come to our end. We want to encourage you to follow us, like our page on Facebook at I Take The Ministry. So that's Facebook at ITAKETHEE and then ministry, MINISTRY. Again, I Take The Ministry. We will have our next session, episode 3, March 3rd at 6 p.m. If you have any questions that you want to ask us, but you want to stay anonymous, send us a private message and we'll try to answer that question there, or at least try to bring a topic about it without mentioning your name.
Absolutely.
So thank you again.
Yes, and share with everyone. Share our podcast today, and just make sure that it's a blessing to everyone. So we love you guys. Thank you for tuning in with us today.
Yes.
And again, we look forward to chatting again next week.
Yeah, God bless you guys.
God bless you.